Well, last week we more or less finished the water tank, except that there's this scenery that needs to be done around the water tank and the grasses under the water tank and so on. But we can't do any of that until we finish the area around the water tank. And we can't do any of that scenery until we build the tunnel portal. So there's going to be this wood tunnel portal here right next to the water tank. And then once that's in place, then all of this scenery, including the grasses and mud and everything underneath the water tank, can be added to the water tank. Now, the water tank is, of course, based on the Denver and Rio Grande water tanks. This is the one at Chama. This is one of our fun places to go. And in fact, this whole area on the railroad is, well, it's sort of intended to be Chama.
It's close.
Yeah, it looks sort of like Chama.
Right.
But it isn't an exact duplicate of Chama. Now, any of the narrow gauge trains that we ride in Colorado, the thing that really jumps out is the scenery.
Oh, and Colorado's got some beautiful scenery.
It's just absolutely amazing. And as I'm looking at these scenes going, how do we want to model this and what do we want to do? It's for me the trees, I think. All of this forest here, I mean, there's the mountains, the cliffs, and the rocks. But getting the trees right, I think, is going to be really important. And here at Chama, right in Chama, there really aren't any of these big pine trees. I don't know what these trees are. What do you think?
Oh, I would have no idea, really.
Cottonwood?
Perhaps.
Yeah, I don't know.
They do change colors in the fall, that much I do know.
Oh, they're beautiful.
Right.
But they're definitely deciduous trees that change into these beautiful colors. There's some quaking aspen in here that I'd sort of like to duplicate, but for the most part, it's these big, huge, tall, with kind of a dark bark. That's what I mostly want to duplicate here around the water tank.
That sounds neat.
And again, one of the things that has always jumped out at me, when you're leaving Chama and the trains are leaving town, they just disappear back into the trees. There's no, like on our railroad, where they disappear into a tunnel portal, but here it's almost like a tree tunnel.
Yes.
And so I want to start doing some scenery in this area. But as you can see, there's a tunnel right here. Well, it's a hole in the wall, of course, that goes through to the big canyon. But it's the first tunnel. It's tunnel number 1. And so I need to come up with a tunnel portal here to dress this area out. And I need to do that before I can actually put in any scenery. And so my plan all along was to sort of duplicate the look of Mud Tunnel here on the old Denver and Rio Grande Western, now the Cumbers and Toltec. But I love this tunnel portal, this very rustic looking wood tunnel portal going through this soft earthen mountain. We've been through this tunnel several times. We love going on excursions here on the railroad, and it's, I don't know, it's kind of a high point.
Right.
And it's just something you look forward to.
Right.
We'll go through Mud Tunnel and Rock Tunnel, and there's all these different places along the Cumbers and Toltec when you're riding it that you just sort of look forward to. And so the plan always has been to build a similar tunnel portal here by the water tank. I also built a very rustic looking wood tunnel portal outside on the railroad, where the railroad goes out into the yard, and it's got the closing door here to keep the squirrels out. And so you can see that this tunnel portal is vaguely similar to the Mud Tunnel portal. But the tunnel portal that I'm going to build inside is going to be very similar to the one that I used where the railroad goes outside. The key here is I want a very rustic, wood, Old West looking tunnel portal. So the first thing, as always, is the design phase. Has to be a certain size. I've made this opening about as small as I can without it snagging any trains. I want to make sure that there's plenty of clearance around the train so that doesn't become a problem. Moreover, the points for the switch that goes over to the turntable are right here at the entrance to the tunnel. Everything's got to be really compressed because space is always an issue. And so the switch stand that operates this switch is right here, and I have to be able to get to it to throw the switch. And so all of that needs to be taken into account as I'm designing the tunnel portal. Now the other side of this tunnel is the giant trestle in the big canyon, and this trestle has to be removable so that I can get two parts of the canyon. And there are rail joiners just inside the tunnel portal there by the water tank, and I need to make sure I can get to those. And then there's also a locking screw to the other end of the tunnel that I need to be able to get to in order to remove the entire trestle. So while I'm pretty sure I'll be able to get to the rail joiners and the set screw even with the tunnel portals in place, I want to design this in such a way that if I ever need to, I can remove both tunnel portals. And so I'm going to design this so that it slides back into this opening, but it can be slid forward. It's going to lock in place with a couple of little wedges, but then those wedges can be removed and the entire tunnel portal slid out of this opening if that ever becomes necessary. Now, it's always best to have a full-size set of plans if you can do that, and then you can lay your parts directly on the plans while you're building it to check that everything is the proper size. So I'm drawing up a full-size set of plans here that I can use to cut out all of my pieces. Now the vertical posts are actually sticks that we bought at the local garden shop. They're supposed to be used to support your tomato plants while they're growing. But it was a really affordable way to get just the right size pieces of wood here to build the vertical elements out of. And then I'm cutting all of these vertical elements here on my little miter box. Now some of the angles don't really line up with the angles on the miter box, so what I have figured out to do is draw a line on the piece of wood at the angle it needs to be, set that into the miter box, and then set a little wooden wedge inside there until the angles align, and then use the miter box to cut that. And so here's the basic framework built out of these tomato sticks that are about 7/16 of an inch. Let's just call that like 12 millimeters because that's closer, and I like metric for doing this kind of work anyway. At any rate, here is the finished frame, and it's in two pieces because it's a double layer. You'll see how that goes together, but there's kind of an inside part and an outside part. I always strive to get everything plumb, level, and square because it'll come out wrong anyway. But if I at least strive to get it plumb, level, and square, it's a good starting point so that my screw-ups are less. So here you can see that double layer effect. There's an inside framework that holds up the walls and ceiling, and then an outside framework that forms the actual exterior of the portal. The upper part of the walls and the ceiling actually slide inside that opening in the wall and will help hold all of this in place. I hope it fits. If I've done my measurements correct, this will slide neatly into that opening and fit in there a little bit snugly. And so there's always an opportunity to screw things up. I'm periodically taking this out into the other room and sliding it in place, making sure that it does go in and out of here somewhat easily. It's not something I'm planning to ever remove. I just want to make sure I can if I need to. One of the tricky things here is I have to be able to work around the switch stand. I don't want to break the switch stand off. So this has to sort of angle in order to avoid hitting the switch stand. Now there's an important feature here. Notice that the entire tunnel portal is actually sitting up just by about 6 millimeters or something. And it will lock in place by small wooden wedges going underneath there. I've done it that way so that I can have scenery and ballast and so on right up to the portal and still be able to slide it forward and out. So that's why there's a little gap there. The inner part of the framework sits snug up against the wall, meaning that the outer part of the framework sits out a little bit from the wall, and this is what I wanted because I want to be able to place some scenery items on top of the tunnel portal. There's a certain amount of time lost every time I slide this into place, simply because once I see it in place, I'm going, holy cow, that looks so neat. And then I have to spend 15 or 20 minutes just looking at it going, wow. Anyway, now that I know that it fits, I can go ahead and finish the ceiling. So I'm placing a bunch of these boards across that inner framework, and they come all the way through to the outer framework, leaving that little exposed edge of ceiling beams. I really like the look of that. Again, periodic checks by just sliding it in place and making sure that I haven't screwed up. And oddly enough, I haven't. It's working fine. Now there's an angled part to the ceiling here that matches those angled pieces on the portal. And I'm only going to continue those across on the right side because that's the only side that actually shows. And I'm going to have the flat ceiling continue all the way over to the left. Otherwise, I have a lot of difficulty getting this in and out. If you peer up in there, then you can see that, no, it's flat all the way across to the left side. And it's got the angled part on the right. But the only way you can see this is to climb on the train and go into the tunnel portal. From either side of the tunnel, all you can see is the angled part of the tunnel liner. Now, the tunnel liner to the right side here, where the wall is just open and has been scaring me silly for fear that I'm going to drop something important down into this opening, will be planked in, and this will be glued directly to the wall. It won't be part of the removable part. So in this case, I'm simply boarding up this opening, and I can actually breathe a small sigh of relief here because now I don't have the opportunity to drop something important down inside the wall. The angled part of the ceiling has to slide right up against this when I slide the portal in place, and you can see that that's working fine. It's sliding right into position. Okay, next up are the abutment wings on either side of the portal. The one to the left side of the portal is kind of special because there's the switch stand right here, and I need to be able to easily get to the switch stand to throw that. So I've designed in here a little 90-degree nook to completely surround the switch stand in such a way that I can very easily get to it. So it extends out here for about 20 millimeters, and then it makes an exact 90-degree angle for about 35 millimeters coming back the other way. That way I can very easily get to my switch stand. And I need to start putting in my extruded styrene foam here that's going to form the mountain behind the abutment wings. I'm using one of these hot wire cutter, flatbed cutter thing deals. Well, they work so great. Anyway, I'm cutting out these little sections. This is of 1/2 inch extruded styrene foam, a little bit trickier to find than the 1 inch. And then over the top of that are 2 layers of 2-inch extruded styrene foam. This is, of course, all part of the mountain and will be covered with trees and scenery and so on. I needed to build this mountain section before I built the little section of the abutment wing, the 90-degree part, so that I could see exactly how big to make that. So back over to the bench now, and I can construct this entire section of the abutment wing that tucks in there to create the little alcove for the switch stand. Again, taking it out to the railroad periodically just to make sure that everything is fitting and aligning. You can see here that this part of the abutment comes right out to the end of the extruded styrene foam, because then the angled part of the wings attach right there and more styrene foam goes in behind those. And I can very, very easily get to my switch stand in order to operate the switch over to the turntable. And the most important part, it looks really good. Okay, now I want to get some stain onto the part that I've built so far. As always, I'm using Watco Danish Wood Oil, both the dark walnut and the natural, the sort of clear natural. I like the color to sort of get lighter and lighter as it goes down, darker at the top and lighter at the bottom. And so I use these two different colors of oil to achieve that. Once the oil is on there, then I'll take a shop towel and wipe away any excess and then allow that to dry. The color dramatically changes as it dries. There's the finished look right there. You always want to make sure you take these are paper shop towels, but I take anything that's got this oil on it outside into the trash. Never leave it inside because it can spontaneously combust. And we don't want to accidentally burn down Garage Mahal, do we? So I use one of these disposable brushes. I've actually been using this same brush for this oil for quite some time. It's starting to fall apart, but anyway, you can see what I'm doing is I'm putting a liberal amount of this, especially down in the low areas to start with, working that back out to the higher areas. But it soaks in, and that's the key. So any that's left on the surface I'm going to wipe away, but I want to get a liberal amount on here so that it has plenty of opportunity to soak in. Because I'm working up near the top of the portal, I'm using this dark walnut exclusively. I'm not mixing in any of that natural color because I want it to be as dark as possible up here. What I'm going for is that old look back in the day when they used to treat this wood with creosote, and you could smell that for a mile off if you were anywhere near railroad tracks, that horrible yet wonderful stinky creosote. And then I'm just going to let this soak in for 10 or 15 minutes or so. When I feel like it's probably absorbed about as much of this as it's going to, then I come in with a paper shop towel here and just try to wipe away as much of the excess as possible. Now you can tell here that as I got near the bottom, I started blending in more and more of the just natural oil, no color to it at all, so that it gets lighter and lighter as it goes down. Because water damage and so on occurs more rapidly at the bottom of a structure like this. The top stays very sun bleached, but it doesn't get as much water damage as the bottom part. You can also see that there are absolutely unstained areas where I inadvertently got some glue on here, and I'll be touching those up with the water-based acrylic paint as I go forward, and that just makes those disappear. I'm using 4 different shades of dark brown, all the way from a burnt umber to a sort of medium. I think they call it melted chocolate. At any rate, I can kind of use one of these colors or blend some together to achieve the look of the area where I'm trying to touch up those little spots where the glue has prevented it from staining. The big thing I'm trying to do here with the acrylic paint is the water damage. Again, as I was saying, toward the bottom of the structure, you see a lot more water damage because rainwater and so on hits the ground and splashes back up, and water pools and so on. So you end up with more water damage at the bottom, and you don't end up with a lot of water damage at all near the top, just sun bleaching. So at any rate, I'm using a color here called barnwood, and it's that same color that I used on the water tank to do the exact same effect. And then I'm applying almost a pure barnwood color toward the bottom here, and then just blending it upward so it gets less and less and less as it goes up. And because I've used the lighter oil down here, this is easier to do because I have less of the dark color that I need to cover up with this paint. And then of course I want to see some of that raw wood coming through the paint. So it's just kind of a, it's art, it's just like painting. You're just trying to, if it looks right, it's right, I guess is the key. And now over to the paint booth. The inside is going to be completely smoke damaged from the locomotives going through here. Plus there's always a fair amount of smoke damage above the portal where the exhaust from the locomotives has cascaded all kinds of soot up onto here. So I'm applying soot, in other words, flat black paint, and making sure that the inside is really well sooted up. But then right near the entrance, you can clearly see where the blast from the locomotive has been coming up here and just totally discoloring the wood. Now, another thing I wanted to do was cover up the wood slats from the back side. There's no light inside the wall, right? But I just want to make sure that a train coming through here with a headlight on or something doesn't light up the gaps between the boards. That would look silly. So I'm just putting some of this black gaff tape on the back of it just to ensure that there's no possibility of light coming through between the boards. So anyway, this is where we'll be picking it up next week. We've got to build all of the mountain now around here, which also means building the abutment retaining walls.
Right.
And just dressing this whole area up. And then we can actually move on to doing the grasses and mud and everything underneath the water tank. So I hope you're going to want to follow along with all of that. And so if you're not a subscriber to the channel, please subscribe. And the easy way to subscribe is by clicking on the upcoming blue button. Zoink! Right there, the blue button. Well, we're not sure how you found this video on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring. And we will see you here on Tuesday. We'll see ya.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.